I'm going to go ahead and start recording. So let me introduce Jay Gary. So Jay is a board member with City Vision University. He is also the director of online education at Oral Roberts University. He has helped develop many graduate programs at Oral Roberts University, at LeTourneau University, and Regent. And he, in many ways, has been my mentor in understanding how to do high-quality online programs. So I asked him to bring his tricks of the trade to help train the faculty. So the first part of this will be going through Jay's presentation, and then the second part, I'll just be providing some updates. And then if people have questions at the end, they can answer those questions at the end. So Jay, if you want to go ahead and start, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. It's good to be with you all. Former friends, former colleagues in different ways and different capacities. Bill Manduca, good to see you, and John Edmiston, and it's great. I'd like to share with you from my own skunk works, and I'm just about to start a term with my students here, about 400 of them, 50 different adjuncts. And those who are listening in, you can mute your mic right now, and then we'll call for interaction as we go through different slides. That mute button's the lower left. But I'd like to share with you related to enabling the learning revolution. I don't think there's ever been a day where, Daniel talked about knowledge going to and fro, but there's never been a day where we have more tools and we have more people ready to learn and to lead, and learners are leaders. And so I want to chat with you about getting in the saddle here, starting a new term at City Vision, and what type of mind you need to bring to it as a servant of all, servant of students. Because I see all of you as facilitators, coaches, mentors to rising stars. I think every student is God's designed a quiver, an arrow in his quiver to redeem this world. And the way you pull that and the way you serve them can make all the difference in your life and theirs and all of ours. So I'm titling what I'm talking about today, Enabling the Learning Revolution, from Gutenberg to Google. The future's here, and City Vision's a sign of that future. It's a skunk's works creating the future, but we need to think, act, and teach as digital immigrants, and for a generation that's immersed in mobile, personalized learning. And so we do that by realizing that we're part of the revolution. And the movement today is Google. We came from Gutenberg. This year we're celebrating 500 years of the Reformation. That Reformation was enabled by the printing press. We're being enabled by the very technologies we're using at City Vision in terms of anytime, anywhere learning, customized, personalized through interaction. And so my friend Rex Miller said, Gutenberg enabled this first learning revolution more than 500 years ago, and Google now symbolizes this new one. And digital technology disrupts traditional power centers by distributing capacities to anyone who chooses to join this historic movement. So we're offering people not only a chance to learn, but a chance to lead in extraordinary ways through the power of one and an audience of one, the Lord Jesus Christ, and to move and shake heaven and earth by their own action and their own leading of the Lord in their life. And so Rex came out with a book called Humanizing the Educational Machine 2 months ago. And he's a graduate of mine in the strategic foresight degree. But his learning manifesto with his skunkworks team called Mindship, this was his learning manifesto, that learning is a unique human experience that engages our uniqueness. It's curiosity of your students is the seed of their learning. Teacher and student disengagement is the product, though, of the educational machine. Well-schooling doesn't equal well-educated. Zip code outweighs funding to predict success. We've departed from a high content world. We've entered a high concept and high context for a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, adaptive world. And so technology will continue to shift as it's done here at City Vision, from the sage on the stage to the guide by the side, the coach of the rising star. And you're enabling that. You're enabling students to go anywhere from where they're starting here at City Vision. So, and then finally, creating social capital is the least expensive and the most powerful lever for transformation. This Learning Manifesto is also, it's a manifesto escaping the machine. Now, a lot of City Vision students want to escape the classroom. They want to escape being tied down. They want to have their learning over their lunch breaks, in the afternoon, to their mobile phone. They want to have their learning on the go while they're in ministry. I talked to a student very similar to the profile that takes City Vision, and he said, Jay said, I had a stop out year, it turned into 8 years, and then I decided I need to get my undergrad degree, right? And so these are the kind of people that are coloring outside the lines already. They want to escape the machine. But education has become a machine, but schools, and particularly communities of learning like City Vision, can create this student-centered, human-enriched, high-achieving environment. But you're the key to it. So the challenge of education is formidable, but it can be brought down to a human scale, and it can be transformed, and it happens, heaven and earth happens where you meet and you engage your students in your courses. So your role as CVU adjunct is critical. It's critical to curate the knowledge, and it's critical to facilitate change in people's lives. You're in the people business, and I can't think of a better business to be in. It's a ministry, it's a vocation, it's a calling to humanize the educational machine. So I'd like to share with you the next couple of minutes just the practices that I've had as best practice as an online instructor. I'm sure all of us have had experience. My experience ranges back about 15 years or even more in terms of delivering direct training virtually. But in training graduate students and undergrad, I listed out about 8 different things here. You can see all the way from before you begin to block out your times, how to get your course off to a great start, communicate off, and I'm going to go through each of these as we go through the presentation. How do you engage the disengaged, that 20%? How do you do a third week student check-in? How do you facilitate dialogue? How do you be brief, timely? How do you build up your list of students in terms of getting to know them, and tips on grading and projects, and then provide just-in-time videos as you need to. A lot of this I've just learned like you've learned. I've learned the Vineyard. I've learned it doing it. I was pleased about 3 months ago to see a book that really started to encapsulate a lot of what I had learned. I always say read my mail, and Aaron Johnson's written this book. I highly recommend it. If not, I recommend you go into his website, excellent online teaching, sign up for the subscribe just to see his tips constantly. But it's a short book. That's what I like about it. It's brief, but it's the kind of advice I give to my adjunct faculty. Next Monday, I'm going to have 50 online faculty working with me as partners to launch Oral Roberts' spring A term. I give them advice like this every 2 weeks and spool it out in a lot of different ways. So with that, let me just jump in. And we do have a chat menu. You're welcome to start up your chat block and do a sidebar discussion. I'm going to put it over on my screen. If I see chat coming through, I'll pay attention to it. You're welcome to make comments or questions. You'll go from there. I'm going to set my chat to public. I had it here. I'm just going to say hello everyone on chat. You should get a message if you scroll through your scenes, and you see it right there. But here's the way I think about a course. A large part of course is course design. And so you might be stepping into a course that someone else has designed. But if you step into that course someone else designed, before you begin, you got to survey that course. You got to survey the syllabus. You got to say, is this clear to me? If it's not, a mist in the pulpit, it's a fog in the pew. So you make sure there's no mist in that syllabus. You make sure everything's explicit. You make sure the course is explicit and laid out that you've been given. Is the information about the textbooks clear? I always like to have textbooks at my fingertips, whether it's in my phone or my tablet. And so I use vitalsource.com to get the instant instructor access to any digital text I need. And your colleagues at City Vision can credential you with major publishers. If you have an account with a major publisher that's been approved by City Vision, approved email at a major publisher, VitalSource gives you instant access to any text by clicking a button, no charge. And so I'm constantly looking at textbooks across the various courses I teach or the courses, degrees I'm developing. But Vital Source, it's not only a website, it's on the platform, it's on your phone. It's a major ebook provider for students, but particularly I use it as a faculty person. So before you begin, get involved in the course. Note the course learning cycle. Is it weekly? Is it build up? Block out your calendar for grading days. You'll know if assignments return to Sunday night, you should be spending some time Monday grading. In fact, write up your announcements, announcing welcome to the course, or add drop dates, or here's the textbook, or course welcome, etc. With my courses, I'll write up 15 to 30 announcements. I'll sequence them by dates, so I don't have to worry about it. Let it just go automatic. So when I start a new course, I'm just changing dates for announcements, right? Do as much prep work as you can before you get deluged with not only the teaching in the semester, but deluged with life as you go through. So before you begin, survey the courses. So it's 2, blackout times for dialogue and grading in your calendar. I mentioned this, but the rule of thumb is, my rule of thumb for my adjuncts, you should post every other day, minimum. 30% student posts, 30% faculty posts compared to student posts for lower level courses, 20% for upper level. If you're a grad course, 10% or should be faculty posts compared to student posts. And I'll say more about good posting, what that means in terms of facilitating dialogue. But your turnaround expectations, a reply to email in 24 hours or less, a grade assignments in 72 hours max. Those are my internal standards. City Vision has their standards. Be aware of those and work with them. I remember I taught at the School of Business and Leadership at Regent, and Bill, you remember this, but the backstory was that our dean had a full teaching load. I had a full teaching load. But he would finish grading. He'd send out a note to all of his colleague instructors, say, I'm done grading. And it challenged us to work just as hard as them and try to beat him. We were sort of in a time like that. So let me see here. So how to get your course off to a great start. Point 3 here. Send out a 3-day countdown to the first day with a course email message. Encourage student introductions in that interlude before you start the course. And then respond to each one. 2, send out a welcome email on day 1. You already do this, but address exactly where they need to start and have a quick start. Communicate often. Day 3, if let's say your first week, a reminder to post, right? A post to getting started in posting in the forum. Day 5, a call to complete the week. Make your subject lines interesting. I learned this, that use numbers like, week 1, : 2 things you need to know, or use adjectives like easy ways to get ahead this week, or use rationales like 3 reasons to start your paper now, or an audacious promise. Here's how to get an A on your interview assignment. You need to be engaging, captivating, and passionate if you want to reach out to students. Now, the normal course, this with a classroom, you walk in, you turn on the lights, you're there, you adjust your personality, there's structure, people come back twice a week, 3 times a week. None of that exists. Think of your students as friends of yours that have moved to another country. Now you must initiate conversations with them, structure, right? Expectations. Functionally, that's how I view my online students. They're in a distant place and time. Distance is dead, but I have to provide the structure and the expectations. So you need to communicate often. Provide rationales for readings, not just your weekly emails. You may want to do it in other ways, announcements, but for example, this might help you with whatever. Communicate your expectations. What I'm looking for, most in this week is, and you need to be positive and begin and end your updates with encouragement. And this is where your role as a pastor and an encourager come into play, leaving inspiration. And I find myself getting into a rut in terms of mechanism. I have to always back away and ask the Lord, help me be your light to these brothers and sisters of mine. So, okay, next, engage the disengaged, 20%. You need to engage them immediately. First, there's the start, no start. Those are not logging in after 48 hours, 72 hours, the first week, those are not turning in their assignments or making low grades, you need to reach out to. Send out emails, make phone calls. So there's 3 ways here in terms of folks non-submission, for example. If you come Monday morning and your grade book is only half students have turned it in, you need to kick in before you grade, start grading to say, hey, project 1 was due yesterday. I didn't find a project from you. When might I expect your submission? Or another way of saying this, I note you haven't logged in lately, related to posting and dialogue. Please let me know if you're encountering some technical issue, if I might be of help. So I'm particularly the first 3 weeks, I am an animal all over the back end in Moodle and whatever LMS I'm in to make sure that my students get the best start possible. And it falls to me to carry out this early warning. And then at some point, and particularly by the 3rd week, usually I do a 3rd week student check-in. For those that, and you'll find, maybe the 70%, 30% rule. 70% are doing well, I want to congratulate them. 30% are not performing well, I want to call them to raise their game, right? And so these are the kind of things I do to them. I'll send out emails to them, and I'll use mail merge with Outlook to do it, or I'll, of course, or even use the in-class list in Moodle. But to those performing well, I'll say to them, hey, congratulations, successful start. The course, I didn't want your hard work to go unnoticed. You're doing a great job keeping up with assignments and actively participating. Don't hesitate to let me know if you have any questions or concern. Remember, I'm here to help you throughout our short 8 weeks together. For those that are underperforming means they're not earning a C or a 75 in the course, let's say. I say something like this: I just wanted to reach out because I noticed you're not getting off to a great start in the course. Please let me know what I can do to be assistance. Review my feedback on your assignments. Contact me if you have questions. I want you to do well in the course, and I know that you're able to do it. I was teaching an online course in this fall. It was a longer course, 15 weeks. And by week 7, I didn't think the student's going to make it. I reached out to him very open like this. He stepped up his game and finished the course very well. So people, oftentimes it doesn't work, but it's not for a lack of trying. And I reach out to people. I send them emails. If I don't get a response, I'll send them a text message. I don't get a response, I'll call them in that order. So other practices of online instructors: facilitate online discussion. Make a first post in all dialogue forums to set the tone and topic. So for example, our focus this week is on, so I look forward to your involvement. You might want to fill in the blanks a little bit more. Now, all your discussions already have topics, right? And all your discussions have topics announced already usually. What this does is it's like turning on the lights in the room in the classroom. You get to the forum first the day before and you say, hey, I'm here. And in that way, you're able to establish some measure of teaching presence. I see in the chat menu, Andrew, you asked about 30%. What I mean by 30% is in a normal lower level courses, faculty should be more engaged with students in engaging students in dialogue. And so if there's 10 students in the class and they're asked to post 3 times a week, that's 30 posts. Well, faculty should be posting 9 times, 30% that week to engage a lower level course. Those are internal standards I follow. You have your own rules of thumb, but those in graduate courses, you would probably be much less involved, 10% of faculty posts, student posts. But engaging the students in dialogue, I keep it brief, I keep it timely, and here's how I do it. Affirmation posts, I say stuff like this: great post, Amy. Who else can add to this thread? Or I do an inquiry post. Amy, you've gotten her started. Thank you. But how would you build on what she has done given McLuhan's theory, right? So I sort of pass a baton. Now, students can have discussion without me there. And some people have a philosophy: I don't want to step in discussion. I might print my students for being active. But students need to know that the instructor is not one of equals, but the instructor is in the room. The instructor has not gone AWOL. And so these are simple ways, through affirmation, through inquiry, through teaching, through status posts you see here, to do things. So inquiry post just passes the baton, acknowledges good work. A teaching post. Thank you, Carlos. Let me add something to your mix. And I always end with a question. I've always, over the years, backed down on my teaching. I used to do a lot in dialogue. I do a lot less. I realize students have read the assignments. They should bring their insights. And so I try to, if I see someone that needs to have a mid-course correction, I'll thank them and say, let me add this, and then ask the question a different way to get the conversation back on topic. And then status posts. Sometimes I'll just conclude, Saturday night or Sunday, if the dialogue ends Sunday night, Sunday by 3 or 4 hours before the end, I'll say, this has been a great week of discussion. I might mention something specific about it, and then thank them for their contributions. And usually, I said, made him reply to my first post. In this first post, when I start the week, I say, this is a moderator post. No need to, please don't reply to this. I'll update the form as I go along. I always try to have that first post dedicated just for me, so students don't do their reply post to it. And I update or close the week with that first post. So I trust you're getting some good insights and inspiration on leading dialogue and jumping into this term. Let me talk further about dialogue here. First, be brief, be timely, schedule in your dialogue on alternative days. At least 4 times a week you should be posting to 2 to 4 students, depending on what level of your course is. 1 or 2 sentence question and response can be just as effective as something longer. Here's some other ways of posting, right? Tell us more why you would believe that, or from what you our readings this week, what would lead you to support this view you're taking? Or for someone that you want to get a contrasting point of view, you could say, what might be 2 or 3 arguments against your current position? You might ask that to other students, or ask them if you want them to flip their thinking, to engage critical thinking. And then one thing I do as I go through dialogue week to week, I go through dialogue week to week. I try to build up a list of students and details about them. So I'll print out a class list and mention from their introduction what work they do, what their interests are, and as they go through, I try to put in-stream points. So I try to use that. These are more than just names. Now, Bill, you mentioned the question in chat. How do you get beyond just attaboy or attagirl, great post, any type of thinking? The way you interact with students in short bursts should not be the norm they interact, and so you need to set expectations. City Vision orientation course on what a true post is. And I didn't type it here, but for me, a true post is usually 150 to 200 words at least. It can go up to 250. And someone's making a point. That point, they're framing the discussion relevant to the prompting topic that's been established. They're framing how they're going to, what their transition sentence in response to someone else or in response to the textbook. They advocating a point in that, making a point from their textbook with citations. They're illustrating that point, and then they're using inquiry, asking themselves a question or others a question related to continuing the discussion among others. So a good post, an academic post, and we ask students to do 3 of them a week, would be a full post. They're not just, I agree with you, I've had that in my life, they bring something to the discussion. Every post, students should realize they have a voice, and every time they speak up in class or they speak up in a forum, they need to bring something of value, and they need to be, and they have good grading, and you're responsible for grading that value and how you grade dialogue. So, Bill, I would say set your expectations. If you need to do a video, 3-minute video or 2-minute video on good posting or handout, do it. But then your grading, enforce that. So the people have expectations like that. So get to know your students, do good grading, and then here's some tips on grading in dialogue. Use a grading rubric to simplify grading. Let me say this, I'm a big believer in grading rubrics, and so is City Vision. I used to take 5 days to grade about 100 graduate students, 75 graduate students. When I started using grading rubrics, dropped down to 3 days, and I was able to do a whole lot more feedback because of the rubrics. And so use your grading rubrics to simplify grading. Learn how to use them. And in rubrics and in grading, not everybody earns in the 90s. Not every football team enters the red zone, right? The 20-yard line. A lot of times it's one or two plays, third down, they don't make it, and they punt. Students will punt in dialogue. They don't need to be given an 85 or a 90 when they punt. They should be given a 75, a 60, sometimes less if they don't make the amount of required posts. So you need to respond dynamically to the situation and let people know how to improve with feedback and grading. So, and only the comments for 20 of the students with the lowest scores in dialogue. Usually for those with dialogue, it's pretty routine for students that know how to do dialogue and they're doing well. So I won't leave a lot of comments other than a one-line copy and paste, thank you for your contribution. But normally, if those are scoring less, I'll give more feedback on how to improve. Tips on grading papers. Use an inline grading rubric. Inline grading rubrics. Do you have those in Moodle? In other learning management systems, you don't download papers, you grade, I think, through Turnitin, you grade it through another system. You can do inline grading, so you don't have to download papers, you grade them online. But irrespectively, on feedback, you should offer affirmation, then offer feedback for improvement. You're not a copy editor of a student, but you should, if you can, make marks on a paper, but also give feedback. And I found for feedback, it helps me to go 1, 2, 3, and list that feedback out at the end of the paper or in the grading, learning management, feedback section. So, comments on inline grading, Andrew?
Yeah, I was going to say we have a module that we've just activated recently that lets you kind of look at it in Moodle through like a PDF viewer, but it doesn't have the advanced features you get in some of the better LMSs. Okay. And the rubric engine right now that we're using in Moodle isn't that great. We are going to move to another LMS, and I'll talk about that. So I think a lot of that stuff hopefully will improve once we move to another LMS. So.
All right. Here's the good perspective there. Here's what I call every coach like yourself, a facilitator, a mentor, needs to believe in the value of action learning, not academic learning. Action learning. Action learning means assignments are connected to life. They're connected to a student's context. It's contextual. It's project-based, action-based, servant-based. I've just been developing some HR courses. We develop about 90 courses a year at ORU and 6 different degrees. And I made sure every assignment is something someone could do if they were in an HR department or a manager working with an HR director. And so everything needs to be application-based. And so if you find your assignments are not up to your standards, send your comments for improvement back to the City Vision staff, the curriculum staff, or to your chair at the end of the semester. I always ask for after action reports in the semester anyway. So you're the front lines facilitator, teacher, coach. Don't make sure your voice is heard to improve the course semester. So, all right, here's a final tip on best practice of online instructors. Provide just-in-time videos of major projects. Now, as archives, not necessarily live meetings. You can do live meetings, but just like we're doing with a Zoom here, you can use Zoom with a free account to record a major project overview. You can use Screencast-O-Matic or Zoom US. We're using Zoom right here. These are just audio-enabled PowerPoints like you're seeing here, usually without a webcam. Produces screencast in high def, 1080 by 720, MP3 format. So these can range from 3 minutes to 9 minutes. Course overviews can be 10, 12 minutes at most. But I'm talking about particular assignments. If you find people not doing well, the next time you teach the course, do a verbal screencast on how to beat that assignment. I was working today on an assignment on a psychology course and how to work through it. And I did a diagram and showed it. And I'm convinced that's going to raise the average grade by at least a letter point or two. So use video well. It's the next frontier. So someone on their phone or their tablet, a just-in-time learning through video, a just-in-time coach. I think that's the direction we're going. I think there's a lot more directions in terms of, and Andrew's been talking about it a lot, related to adaptive learning, competency-based learning, all these other ways, but simple things we can do that have just as much impact. We need to do them and be a servant of our students. So, and I post my previews to YouTube. There's other protocols you might have at City Vision. I keep them unlisted, but it just means anyone with a URL, if I paste in Moodle or my LMS, can see it there. So, in a sense, here I've been sharing these best practices of online instructors. I trust this is helpful. We have a couple minutes here, about 15 minutes together, and I wanted to play you a video from, I'm looking over here at my video screen. The other day I saw a commercial for iFit, and I wanted to talk to you about how would an iFit coach, who's an automatic intelligence agent connected to a wearable wristband, how would that be like an online instructor? How would that be different? And so I'm going to play this commercial about 1 minute, and then we'll open up for discussion for 10 or 15 minutes, talking about the best practice we shared, talking about iFit, talking about automation, and learning for the days when we have TAs as AI TA bots, right, helping us. But let me play you this commercial. I'm going to drag it over, make it big, and play it. And this is video enabled. And let's just do that. Make it large screen and go like.
You want results?
That's it, all the way.
Then you need a coach.
Let's go. Go!
Introducing iFit Coach, a complete personal coaching system. This isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. It's one-size-fits-you. Individualized coaching 24 hours a day. iFit Coach monitors and connects every part of your day. Activity, exercise, nutrition, even sleep. Your iFit Coach does all the thinking for you, so you always know what to do next and exactly how to do it.
Help yourself to an extra serving. You worked out hard today.
Go to ifit.com and get iFit Coach for just $9 a month. That's 24/7 coaching for 30 cents a day. Plus, you'll get an iFit wearable that connects you to your coaches, so they're always with you wherever you go. A $129 value for free. iFit Coach, only at ifit.com.
All right, let me open up our discussion here. You can unmute yourself, or Andrew mute us. So let's chat about this.
When I am doing a...
Okay, here we go. So,
okay. I just unmuted everyone. You can either put your questions in the text box, or you can put your questions, you can ask your questions, using your audio. If you have a lot of noise on your end, then I'm going to recommend that you mute yourself if you're not asking a question.
all right, so let me just throw this question open. You're welcome to put in the queue, as Andrew said, questions, and I see one from Bill Manduca. We'll address that as we go along. Let's talk about, in what way are you like a coach? In what way are you different from an iFit coach? And in what way might even Christian education change the next 5 or 10 years? In other words, this is what our people are looking for in one sense. They're looking for personalization. What does that say about your role? So let's talk about it. I'll throw it open to the floor. Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the one thing that an online instructor has to work harder at, as opposed to being in person in a classroom, is the relational aspect with the student. So we have to kind of overcome the technology, the impersonalness of technology, and really engage the student. And there has to be a balance between that and the actual course load and the ability to give personalized feedback.
Excellent, excellent. So social, personal engagement, student engagement, and personalization with the online instructor. Here the personalization comes from a Fitbit, right? And you have an actual video scripts coming up to you, right, based on your performance. It's your discretion to lead that student engagement in a way that can be far more personalized. I don't know if people would take an AI bot praying with them, but you can do that. So who else?
Hey, this is Ken Height. I was thinking that relationship issue is one of trust, and certainly as mentioned earlier, the current education doesn't lend itself to trust at all between the teacher and the student. And so the more we can find out about our students, either from Rachel or Evan or somebody, or from the student, as what's going on in their lives, things like that, the more they can trust us with their comments or questions, and lay them more open to feedback.
That's excellent discovery. Before advocacy and content, do a lot of discovery with students, and I've seen success with people having conference calls, to launch courses, just to have people share around the circle like we used to pass a stick around. But definitely. What else? And that's a dimension that we don't see here. You don't see a group of people, mutually coaching, peer coaching. It's just technology-enabled coaching, right? What other, comparing, contrasting your role, your aspirations for online teaching?
I'm just wondering, how much of your personal self as a instructor would you be comfortable with sharing? Is there a guideline for that?
That's good. Is this Dee who's speaking?
Yes, I'm sorry, it's Dee.
Yeah, Dee. Good. 941. Okay. Dee, I think, the value added that you bring to City Vision is who you are. The more you can share that, in appropriate boundaries and appropriate ways, all the better. I mean, if you're in a webinar, I mean, if I had a cat, I'd let a cat crawl across my desk while I'm doing a webinar, right? And we record faculty all the time doing video clips, and the faculty that are most engaged are the ones that are just most idiosyncratic, right? And it becomes conversation points. And so talk about your hobbies when you introduce yourself, or talk about, it doesn't need to be a point of need, but it can be something that's distinct. Talk about that, and as a way of evoking in others. So excellent questions. So let me go back while we're talking here. Bill Van Duca says, can you share how you manage your grading workload on an online course with 30 students? 1,200 word papers with and 400 to 500 word posts. Well, papers are distinct from posts, right? And so the posting in dialogues, I grade largely impressionistic as I read the week. I don't usually go back to read a lot, but I try to at least collect them together to take a ballpark in the LMS to see before I grade them. So I don't study those as carefully because I've seen them already. Managing workload, VM Johnson says, I've discovered it's very different from strictly online. I like the engagement recommendations. What additional recommendations you might have for a high energy instructor like myself that tends to feed on feedback? VM Johnson, I would say, hey, if you can hold at least one live meeting, I know it's tough with different asynchronous online, at least hold one live meeting to kick off a course, or a QA session, 3 weeks in, the more the better. If not, have office hours and schedule people. Say, I'm scheduling people hours. Can I meet you? Personal one-on-ones, and just put a schedule out and say, I have slots open. I need people to sign up and make office hours a part of the course at least once. So excellent. But grading workloads for papers, you just have to be fresh. Bill, I found you have to be, steel yourself that you're going to, take a break to get back to give every paper your best. I save notes from grading other papers, comments, recycle at certain points, but I'm always trying to be my best to give them good comments. I try to spend anywhere from 5 minutes to 10 minutes on a paper at most. I try to not spend more than that. All right, other reflections on online instructors versus AI coaches. Linda, you say you keep a spreadsheet on each class, but for forum posts, I jot down key points when I review the post. So my feedback on forums is a lot less than I do on papers, but I give feedback in the forum as it goes along normally. So that's where the expectations I get of my students is in the forums, I'll give you feedback but not in grading as much numerically or quantitative grading. In my papers, I'll give more feedback. I got the highest instructor marks when I was grading at the School of Business and Leadership of 12 faculty, usually in the top 1 or 2 because of ways I handled not only grading, but the ways I handled previews. I would meet I would chunk the course into 2 or 3 segments, and I would meet ahead of time to start a different unit and live meetings, and I would record those. All these options are available to you. Some of these high-end options of high touch through Zoom are not required, and you need to introduce them appropriately for online students across different time zones and very busy lives. But there's all kind of ways to enhance your ability to reach people. So over to everybody here. In fact, let me do this. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Hold on here. Stop sharing this screen. Let's bring up the video screen. At least we see a chat and a video screen side by side. I see there, John, at your scheduler there. Other thoughts, topics? Linda, Joy, anyone? Leonard, what are you thinking? What are best practices? What have you found? And then what are you aiming to do, or what's one thing you take from as you start this new term you would take from what we're talking about today to invite students into a learning revolution and to engage students? Over to everybody else.
And before we move on, Valerie, I know you had a post on the chat. Did you want to speak to that? Your post that you included in the chat, your question?
I had to remove it from mute. He's actually already answered that question. I appreciate it.
Very good. All right. Wanted to make sure we got that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
So this is Andrew. Let me just add a couple comments for some of the suggestions logistically how you could do some of these things. So if you ever have a YouTube video that you want to post, you can go into editing mode in the course. It's in the top right, and then you can edit, and then you add the YouTube video as a link, and it'll automatically add the YouTube. If that's too complicated for you, you could always just email Rachel and say, add this to my course. If you ever wanted to do a conference call or something along those lines, there's a few options. This Zoom link can work. If we're using it as a staff, we kind of get dibs on it, but in the evening, no one's really using it. So this Zoom link is actually just an open room that you could use with your students. Alternatively, there's sites like freeconferencecall.com that you can use to set up conference calls if you want to do that. And it's the same thing as you could say, I'm going to do a conference call at Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be at this number, and then you make an announcement. In terms of emailing the students, I think most of you know, but usually how I do that is I go to the participants list in Moodle, and then I'll do a select all and then send out a message to them. That's the best way. You can post it in the announcements. I'm not sure if those always get to the students, because I've heard from students that a lot of times they don't see the announcements section. So I would encourage you to send out your emails using Moodle. So those are 3 tips. But any other questions before we transition to the next part? Or comments? All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the next part real quick. And let me just share my screen here.
Andrew, I'm going to step out. I have another meeting that's been scheduled on top of this, but I appreciate you, appreciate everything you folks are doing.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. This was amazing. This was fantastic, and right. I think we all aspire to meet your standards. So thank you.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So Jay, as you all can see, he loves high quality courses. He has really good ideas for standards. I think that, we should all try to meet those standards. I want to just give some updates in terms of where we are as an institution and some of the changes that are coming up. So hopefully you all can see my shared screen. If you are looking at the emails, this is the presentation I think that was sent to you all yesterday. But so as a school, we've been growing. We grew from 160 students to 206 this year. So we had about 28% growth. That largely came with the addition of the business degree and our partnership in Kenya. And let me just give you some an update of what we did in 2016. In 2016, we launched a $5,000 total cost for a 4-year degree path with Saylor Academy. We finished completing all the courses for our new business degree. We rebranded our master's program from technology and ministry to technology and social entrepreneurship. And we submitted a degree proposal for an associate's and bachelor's in pastoral ministry. And we're in the process of developing a master's in business administration. And we launched something called the Global Christian College Credit Consortium. And we launched a group called the Christian Higher Education Innovation Alliance. The rest of this, I'm not going to go into. Some of the other updates, though, to be aware of. So we have a new associate's and bachelor's program in Christian ministry and leadership. What that's going to do, it's going to add several new courses. We've already added Old Testament and New Testament survey. We're going to add biblical interpretation, biblical theology, church planting, and homiletics, teaching and preaching. You can look at that. It's not public yet, but you can look at that at the link that you see there. Our plan currently is to launch an MBA program in the fall of 2017, and we are in process of developing a Doctor of Business Administration and Associates in Addiction Studies. The other updates is we're looking to move to a new learning management system probably in the summer of 2017, so we'll provide training for that. We're likely to go with Populi. I think it will have improved usability compared to Moodle, but it's going to be a pretty big shift. So we'll keep you all posted on that, but hopefully it will help improve the overall student experience. Just another update is, one of the things that our accreditor DEAC, they require that we collect data to improve quality. So one of the ways we're starting to do that is to collect data that we're calling faculty analytics. And we're looking at really 3 areas. One is on grading timeliness. So our contract says that faculty are required to grade within 7 days. What we're going to do is we're going to, monitor that, just using database queries, and we're going to give a 3-day buffer because we realize that some students will grade, will submit early. So we're saying that, for faculty on the analytics, faculty need to, at least the data that you get, need to stay under 10 days on average in terms of when they grade. But you should be grading within 7. But the idea is if someone, the assignment is due on Sunday and someone submits on Wednesday, that's going to show a little bit longer. That's why we put the 10. And what you're going to do is you're going to be getting an email sometime in the next week or 2 that's going to provide the data of based on your what we found in the system so far. The other thing, and this is one of DEAC's strictest standards, at the end of each term, we collect data on 3 questions they have on student satisfaction, and we're required to have above 75% on all 3 questions. And about every other year, we have one or 2 faculty that don't meet that standard, and we actually have to submit a special report to our accreditor saying how we will meet that standard and how we will correct that. And usually the only correction they accept is usually the faculty, either doesn't continue or, is given, one more chance because that's a pretty strict standard they have. Right now, most of the faculty are meeting that. The third thing, and this isn't necessarily, evaluation, this is more, I've had some faculty say, am I more strict? Am I more lenient than other faculty? It's more just feedback, and it's not used, for faculty evaluation, but so you would know how your average grade compares to other faculty. That may not be in the initial email we send to you, but we're going to develop that over the next month or so, and we'll send that to you so that you would know. So with some of the faculty, we'll be following up to set up calls. We're a relational ministry, and I realize a lot of you are doing this as an active service, so it may not feel fun to get up, here's how I'm doing in terms of these metrics. But at the same time, we're held accountable to our accreditors, so this is something that we need to do. But we like to be relational, and we like to follow up with people to talk about, okay, what are ways that we can improve? And I realize that for some people, this just isn't going to work out economically for you. You may not have enough time for the money that we pay, and that's fine, and that's a part of the conversation, that some people, and then there's other people that this works out great for them, and so that's a part of the conversation that we'll have too. So just to clarify again some of the expectations. So Jay talked about best practices. This is kind of the minimal. So forum and assignments are due on Sunday, and I recommend that you use the grading of the forums being more holistic. One thing just to clarify is that APA style is not required for forum post unless it's an uploaded Word document. But we still require informal citation. So people, can't plagiarize, but they need to be referencing. The reason is people need to learn to write. Probably less than 5% of our students will ever regularly use APA style. Most of our students are going to be using business style writing. They need to know APA style in case they go to graduate school, but that's not the primary focus. So I know most of you have been trained in schools that are only training people for graduate school, so they're very focused on APA. We want to basically train people in two modes of writing, essentially. Jay talked about giving comments. I typically aim for at least a paragraph of comments if I'm grading a document. And what Jay commented, he said, if you're active in the forums and you give them a reasonable grade in the forums, a good grade in the forums, you don't need to give them a whole lot of comments on their forum grade. But if you give them a bad grade, they want to know why. So generally, there's the phrase in the Bible, judge not lest ye be judged with the same standard. I find that students rarely judge me whenever I give them an A. If I give them an F, they want to know why. Giving them an F without any feedback at all is we routinely get probably 4 or 5 comments a semester where students will say, I got graded Fs for these 6 assignments, not a single comment, and that's just something that we can't do with our students. So please know if you're giving them poor grade, and unless the assignment just wasn't submitted at all, then there needs to be some sort of comments. And typically, I view myself as a consultant that is, how do I add value to this so that they, if they were to revise it, how would they improve it? The other comment that I would say, just adding to what Jay said, I've seen some faculty, give really good comments, and other faculty are essentially, all their grading is proofreading. Or APA citation feedback. My view is that should be minimal. Most of it should be on the substance. Now, some students, if they're having writing problems, what our process is you need to refer them to, you need to let Rachel know, and we'll require that they take an English course to get their writing up to speed. So let's see, the other comments is, I mentioned, people need to grade within 1 week. Usually, I usually grade within 2 or 3 days. Usually what I would do in most of my courses is I would usually grade all my papers and assignments on Tuesday, and then, maybe again on Thursday or Friday. And people are talking about how do you manage workload. How I manage my workload whenever I was grading is I would just do it as a big block, and I would crank through it, and I would be like a machine. I would, go through it, but providing high quality, feedback to people. Submitting final grades within 2 weeks, responding to student messages and emails within 48 hours. And, you know, we're going to be doing database queries and things along those lines to try to make sure the standards are met. So the last comment is, I know we have a lot of issues on plagiarism. There's going to be probably 2 or 3 students that are coming from our Kenyan partnership that will be removed from the program just because they've repeatedly plagiarized. Generally, my advice is, you know, number one, distinguish between intentional copying, like they copy the entire assignment, like they're trying to cheat, versus being naive. And we have a good number of students that, you know, you wouldn't think that they're that naive, but a lot of our students just have never been brought up in a culture where you have to cite everything. So you need to, you know, explain to them that. Now, people who repeatedly plagiarize, usually what I do, if it's, you know, gross, it's gross copying, it's where it's clear where they're just trying to cheat, I will come down on them very hard, and then I'll say if it's repeated, you'll get a 0 for the course, or 0 for the, you know, the assignment. And then, you know, if it's repeated, they get a 0 for the course. If you want, you know, before you go to those extremes, you can work with deans or work with myself or Rachel, and, you know, provide them the links to the standards of academic integrity. But the reality is, we got about 5% of our students that they're trying to game the system. They don't want to put in the work, and we have to identify those, and they'll get bounced out of the system eventually. But that's just a part of, you know, we're serving at-risk communities. Some people think they can con their way through college. It's not going to happen, but some people are trying, and you know, we have to address that. So in terms of support, I've provided the contacts here. Rachel is going to be your contact for most things. If you have academic questions, you can contact Dean Van Hamilton or Dean Patton. So with that, let me just stop and see if people have any questions.
Yeah, Andrew, this is Bill Manduca. I'm looking to try and find a way to make the forum post feature in Moodle the ability to grade inline there. I noticed in the last course I taught that there was some ways that at the end there was a drop-down menu that you could rate the post right there, but it wasn't consistent throughout all of the post forum sections throughout the course. So I didn't know if that was a function of Moodle or whatever, but it would be nice to be able to provide comments for the forum post rather than just doing a separate getting out of the system and sending them an email.
Right.
But I did want to make the comments a reply to their post because now it's public.
Yeah, that's a good comment. Let me just talk to that. So if you grade right while you're looking at their forum post, it doesn't give you the option to put in comments. I think in the grade book there might be a way to do that. I need to double check if you go directly in the grade book. I will give, if I'm giving strongly negative feedback, then I don't put it in the forum. I'll give, but there's a certain amount of, if someone is, you know, it's almost like if you're leading a small group and someone says something heretical, right? What do? Well, you know, on one level, you don't want to let the heretical statement stand. On the other, you don't want to shame that person. So if I feel like the culture of a class is getting out of line in that all the students are posting attaboys, then I'm going to post 4 or 5 public. You've gotten a 0 for your comments for this section, and you can post more comments, and I won't give you a 0. But right now, attaboys count as 0 in this course. And I'll do that very strongly in week 1 and 2 so that the students understand I'm not going to get away with attaboys for my comments. So, you know, it's a discernment thing. Now, I don't know if there is an easy way without going into the grade book to do that, but I think there might be a way on the grade book. I'd have to check with
Yeah, along those lines too, and we're talking about dialogues like Jay was talking about, I found it interesting. His comment was that he strives to have posts be somewhere between 150 to 200 words. Many of the courses that I'm teaching right now for CVU are somewhere in the order of 400 to 600 words per post. That's an assignment in my eyes that if I'm going to read that, I need to be able to do it in a place that I can give them constructive comments back. Plus, it increases the workload in the forum post. You know, now I'm reading 2 assignments versus forum posts and their regular assignment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll take that into account. I understand the concern. Are there other comments that people have or questions?
This is Ken. In doing grading for the English class this last term, or fall 1 term, I found that if you put a number grade, do that selection first, and then hit comment, and then hit reply, then it sticks. So it seems to, anyway, been my experience.
Yeah. Some people have a hard time if they're looking at a forum and then they put a number grade, you know, a 1 through 4. If they don't do anything, then it doesn't automatically save. You have to do something to get it to save. Is your point? So
yeah. Andrew, my most frequent comment is you have not engaged with the course readings or the textbooks. And I must have put that like 60 times, you know, over and over and over again. And they are trying to lie to me that they have engaged. I know what's in the textbook. I know what's in the readings. And they're giving opinions from the media and their own thought and their own personal experience. They're not engaging with the course material because they hate reading. And I am at the point now where I'm ready to give an entire class a 0. You know, if this emerging ministry thing gives me the same lot of canned opinions from people, I just want to give it the people that do that 0.
Right. Well, I assume that you're talking about your Theology of Technology course. There's 2 things going on with that course. One is that you're getting some students that really shouldn't be in the course. We need to figure out how to do that filtering. And right now, we just don't have a very effective mechanism to do that filtering. And it's a trade-off between, do you have the critical mass, do you have 2 students who are qualified in the course, fully qualified, or do you have 10 and you know, 3 are not at all qualified, 5 are qualified, semi-qualified, and then, you know, 2 are fully qualified. So we just don't have a good mechanism for that. You know, our Kenyan partnership, part of what's happened with that, just so you all know, they let in some students. So the students were supposed to all be at the junior level, and they let in some students who weren't at the junior level. So we have like 3 or 4 students that really shouldn't be in the program at all that will probably be removed either this term or next term. So those students are bringing down kind of the average. And sometimes I think the challenge is also, you know, which audience is the course written for? You know, we wrote that for a master's course, and then we said we'll let undergraduates take it. But I think we need to figure out, you know, some better mechanisms to address.
Well, I mean, even at an undergraduate level, theology is a theology. They've got to actually talk about God.
Right. Yeah.
And the books are very light in that course. They're not stressful. They're senior high school level. They're not even undergraduate level. So, but you know, there's a lack of, even in other courses, there's a lack of actually grappling with the course material, and that frustrates the life out of me.
Right. Yeah. Well, John, you and I can talk more about, you know, what do we do long term with those courses, because I think some of those, you know, part of what's happening as an organization is we are shifting our masters to add an MBA, and some of our courses we might reposition in how we're offering them. So I'm thinking about that right now.
Okay, not a problem.
Okay. Any other questions or comments or feedback?
Linda had a question in the chat box. Linda, did you want to verbalize that?
Sure, I can do that. This was going back to the comment about the timing of the grading. And it really kind of relates to the last concern. It's the lack of engagement on so many people. But in addition to content, some of it is timing. I've been doing this since it was Rescue College, and there are always a handful of students in each class that post excessively late. I'm not talking about they got the flu, so they got a little bit behind. They post weeks and months late. And so my concern is if we're looking at even a 10-day, with a 3-day window or 3-day cushion on the grading turnaround, if it's just based on the initial assignment due date, it's going to look like we're grading way late when in reality it's because the stuff is being submitted way late.
Yeah, so let me clarify on that point. It's actually based on when they submitted.
Okay.
So that's why I said we gave an extra 3 days, because if they submit on Wednesday and then you graded it that following Tuesday, that looks like it's been 7 days, but the due date was only Sunday. And that's how I usually grade. I usually don't, do a bunch of grading until the due date in most cases.
Yeah, but what happens is that, like on a forum, they'll submit the forum like a month and a half late. I won't have realized that they're doing the forum for week 1 a month and a half late until I'm right at the end of the course. Oh, look, they submitted that one. It was the forum for week 1 and they submitted it 6 weeks late. Now I'm marking this thing up a month after they submitted it.
Yeah. Okay, that reminds me, there's one other thing I want to share that we're familiar with that problem, and we've actually added a module to Moodle that will help. Let me tell you, this module is buggy, but there's a new module that you should be able to see on my shared screen. Can you see it? It's called the Marking Manager. Do you see it?
Yeah.
And what it has is it has how many items require grading, how many are graded, how many are not submitted. Now, let me tell you, whenever I say it's buggy, there's a lot of things that it's not going to track correctly. So you'll just have to kind of keep that in mind. It'll make your lives a little easier because you'll see, okay, I need these 3 forums that I need to grade now. But there's going to be some things like, depending on what courses you're taking, short answer, like if you go into the grade book and you manually grade things, it may not record that you graded it. So use this as a rough guide, but don't feel like if it says it requires grading that we're going to think that it wasn't graded, because whenever we run the database query, we look for the grade, not this marking manager. But the marking manager itself, I'm not going to go into it because it would show student names and we're recording this. But the marking manager itself will show the student names and what assignments are left to be graded. And that should make it a little bit easier for you all for things like that.
Andrew, one of the things I've been experimenting with is in the grade book, I make sure, I work to make sure that all of my submissions are graded by the actual Sunday due date or prior to the next assignment opening.
Yeah.
And anyone that has not submitted a submission at that point, I automatically have the grade book put a 0, and then I lock the submission out so the students can't update or add more submissions. And the only way that they can add the submission that's missing is if they email it to me. And that way, that forces the responsibility of the student to input their submissions, and if they want it graded, they submit it into the professor.
I'm not sure if that's a best practice that I would recommend, because if you did that every Sunday, then the students that you're going to let submit late, then you're not letting submit late. Now it's going to be up to you, but I definitely wouldn't recommend that as a best practice. If you want to do that,
well, what I do what I do is when they do submit the paper, if it's within the late deadline, I just go back in and give them the grade they would have gotten.
Right. Yeah. So here's one other thing is you shouldn't be accepting assignments by email. That is basically a no-no by accreditation standards. You should be accepting everything through the learning management system. If you're accepting them by email, that's a serious problem. So don't do that, because we won't have a paper trail if they want to see how did you grade something. And whenever we get the accreditation visit, they're going to look in the courses and they're going to go and see, how did you grade? And if you don't have an assignment listed in the learning management system that's sitting in your email account, then they're going to say you're making up grades. So that's a problem.
Okay.
So other comments?
I've had students in the past who started late. Is that going to continue, or be controlling that?
Well, the example I use is, I don't know how many of you have gone to either, I've grown up going to lower income urban churches, and there's always this battle between the culture that consistently arrives 15 minutes late and the pastor that wants to start on time. And, what do you do with that? Well, you don't shift the start time 15 minutes because that means that you're going to then start 30 minutes late, right? But at the same time, I don't think that the best approach is, I've heard of churches that, if church starts at 10 o'clock, at 10:01, they lock the doors and you have to sit outside in shame until the worship service is over. That might make sense in some, churches where everyone's on time and used to it. But if you did that in an urban church, you'd be a very small church fairly quickly in most cases. So I think the same principles apply in our courses, that we're trying to uphold a strong standard. So I set very strong expectations at the beginning, but then I give grace is kind of how I do that. So, many of you have worked in at-risk communities, so it's going to be the same principles that you've done. You don't, start off with relaxed standards. And then because, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile to a certain extent. So, that would be my general advice on how to approach that is, we're all doing our best. Linda, who said she's been here, since the beginning, it's something we've fought since the beginning. And I don't know that there's an easy solution. I think that it's a continual struggle. And, most pastors of urban churches I know, it's a continual struggle for them. So, I get that part of what we're teaching people is not just the class, but how to get things done on time. And that, so we do leave it up to the faculty on do you want to mark down grades for being late? In most of my courses, typically I don't do that often. Some faculty are very strict with that. Barbara's done a good job. Barbara Clemenson's done a good job of being fairly strict and, getting students to meet our standards. But, I think that you're going to have to do your best to discern that. Does that answer your question?
Andrew?
Yep.
Andrew, just referring back to the this is Lorraine, referring back to the presentation points. This is a really good time when they're late to send out that little comment that says, boy, you've got a lot of potential here. I don't want you to lose grade by not getting this in on time. That's worked for me real well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes it sound like caring, right? And you've just set the expectation. So you've said, wow, I really don't want to have to drop you a letter grade, but you're late. So when are you going to get that? So, and many of you have been a part of teams, how do you get people to submit things on time? You always ask for, when are you going to give it to me? And, they give you that date, and if they miss it, then, at that point, Lorraine's already given them some grace, and if she wants to mark them down, then, they probably would feel like they're being treated fairly, right? So.
Andrew, I had one other question regarding class on the Moodle system. Every class I've done so far, I've brought maybe 2/3 of the student all the way through, but there's usually 3 to 5 students that it appears they've dropped the course.
Yep.
But they're carried all the way through to the end, and I don't know if they're what's going on with them. They stay in the roster of the class. Is there a way to drop those off the roster so we don't have to worry?
We're required to keep them on for accreditation purposes, because we need to know who signed up and how far they went. So usually they're not dropped. Sometimes we'll get a drop request and Rachel will remove the student if that happens soon enough. But otherwise, there'll be things where a student might take 2 courses and they only get to week 2 in one course and they get to week 8 in the other. For financial aid purposes, we actually have to show their 2 weeks of activity, or else we'd have to pay that money back for the course. So that's part of the reason why we do things.
So zeros all the way through is not a problem.
If they're not there, that's fine. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just for those students, whenever I'm grading, I'll just put a 0 at the end, and you can override through the grade book and do it.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Last call. Any other questions? Let me just see on the chat. Any questions on the chat?
Nope, look like we got everything.
Okay, so thanks everyone. So classes start on Monday. So, remember Jay's suggestions, send out an introduction early, post, on the forum. And, I feel like, Jay sets a really high standard for everyone. And I think that's the way we should be, is we should, have a really high standard. So, I hope that I'm going to be taking a lot of those tips whenever I teach courses, and hopefully you all. And if you have questions on how to implement some of the suggestions, email Rachel. She's going to be the best person to help you implement some of those logistically.
I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Gary's standards are excellent. I took 3 courses from him at the doctoral level, and it was an absolute joy. And so I just want to validate that from a student perspective. He was a really good instructor.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, so he's on our board. I think he's one of the top 5 Christian graduate business program, people in the country. So I think we're, honored to have him on our board and to be able to provide this presentation. So, okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you all for your service. I know that this is an active service, so we really appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
All right.
Bye-bye.